All right. Today, we're tackling a really controversial piece of legislation coming out of the Philippines. It's a bill that's supposedly about protecting a former president. But the source we're looking at today asks a pretty sharp question. Is this really a shield for the nation, or is it a shield for just one man?
A preemptive pardon wrapped in legislation. Wow. That's the claim right at the heart of the article we're breaking down today. It's how one source describes Senate Bill 557, the President Rodrigo Roa Duterte Act. That one sentence really it tells you everything you need to know about the powerful critique we're about to dive into.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. We'll look at why the source says it's a bill for just one person, whether it's really an escape hatch, how it uses the idea of sovereignty, the whole game of political loyalties going on, and, at the end of the day, whose justice is really being put on hold.
So first things first, the source points out a huge red flag. And you know what it is? It's the name itself. Think about it. Naming a law after a former president who's currently facing international charges. Yeah, the article argues that you just can't ignore that.
And the argument goes that the name basically gives the game away. This isn't about some broad public policy. Not at all. The source says it's about building a, quote, legislative wall specifically to keep former President Duterte away from The Hague. It's that direct.
Okay, so let's get into the real meat of the accusation here. The source argues that if you look past the name, you start to see what this bill is really for.
Just look at these phrases the source uses. A legislative escape hatch, a legal smokescreen, a political fire blanket. They are not holding back at all. The central claim here is that this whole thing is just a fancy maneuver to shield one person, and, in the process, it actually weakens the very laws it's supposed to be supporting.
So you might be asking, what's the argument for the bill? Well, a big one you hear is national sovereignty. But the source we're examining today makes a pretty serious charge, that this idea is actually being weaponized, not to protect the country, but to help someone evade justice.
Okay, so a really important piece of this is the term extraordinary rendition. It's a phrase being thrown around to defend the former president. So let's be super clear on what it actually means. We're talking about the illegal transfer of a person from one country to another, totally outside the legal system, usually for interrogation or even torture. It's serious stuff.
And this is where the article just lays it all out. On the one hand, you have the definition of extraordinary rendition. Illegal abduction, no legal process, foreign agents. But then look at what the source says actually happened. A legal arrest, following established Philippine law, carried out by Filipino authorities. The contrast is stark, and that's exactly why the source calls the use of that term here not just legally illiterate, but morally grotesque.
And then, to really drive home its point about what it calls selective outrage, the article just puts this number up, 30,000. While all this energy is going into protecting the rights of one person, the source points to this, the estimated number of people who died during the war on drugs, a number, it argues, that doesn't seem to get the same level of concern from lawmakers. And this quote from Representative Percy Sandanya really nails that point. He says something along the lines of, Senator Imee is being overly dramatic. So much worry about extraordinary rendition, but totally silent when it comes to EJKs, extrajudicial killings. It's just a gut punch of an accusation, right?
Okay, so the article shifts gears a bit here, from the legal stuff to the pure politics of it all. The suggestion is that this bill isn't really about law books. It's about a messy, high-stakes game of loyalty, and maybe even betrayal.
So what would this bill actually do? Well, this table breaks it down pretty clearly. Right now, cooperating with the ICC is based on existing law. But under this new bill, you'd suddenly need a green light from the Department of Justice and the DILG. The source basically calls this a political permission slip. It's not about law anymore. It's about getting political approval, which the article calls institutionalized obstruction.
So you have to wonder, right? Why is this bill being pushed so hard? Well, the article offers this interpretation, that it's all a public performance of loyalty from Senator Imee Marcos. The unspoken message, directed right at Vice President Sara Duterte, is basically, Inday, I got you. Let me be useful to you.
But here is where it gets absolutely wild. The article contrasts that show of loyalty with this, a public claim from Sara Duterte herself that she once hired someone to assassinate Imee's brother, who is now President Bongbong Marcos. The source brings this up to show just how complicated and maybe even dangerous these political alliances are. It's just incredible.
And what about the president's reaction to his own sister's bill? The palace's response was apparently just 2 words, good luck. The article reads that as way more than just a casual remark, It sees it as a warning shot, a sign of a really deep crack forming within the ruling alliance.
So all of this, the legal arguments, the political drama, it all builds up to the source's final and maybe most important point. What is the real human cost of all this?
And here's the bottom line, according to the source. This bill isn't about protecting the nation. It's about protecting those who break it. The argument is that while everyone is arguing about legal technicalities for one powerful person, you've got thousands of families just waiting for any kind of justice at all.
And this really gets to a fundamental question the article wants us to think about. If lawmakers can just write laws specifically designed for the powerful, then what is justice? Is it a principle that applies to everyone, or is it just a privilege for the few?
And this isn't just some academic debate, right? The source brings it all back to this one final, very human question. With all this focus on protecting one man, whose justice is being delayed? Whose justice is being pushed aside? That's the question we're left with.